Hello everyone, just making another quick video for our next lesson. We're going to be changing realms for the first time and going into the European realm, the Central Russian and Central Asian realm, and the Polar and Pacific realms will be in our next lesson. So one thing I want to do in this video is, first of all, thank you all for doing your work on your Google Earth assignments. You're doing really well. Just a couple of hiccups here and there, but overall everybody's really adapting and using Google Earth, so I hope y'all are enjoying this and not just doing strictly textbook type material. So we're going to, for the next lesson, I'm going to try something a little bit different, a different tool. So far I've had you pick out a place that maybe interests you in the realms that we're studying and having you place pinpoints on those and tell me where they are and a little bit about them. So now we're going to use our mapping skills a little bit more and touch on some of the things I did in the very first introductory video. The first thing I want to mention though, before we get on Google Earth, I'm going to jump back over here into Blackboard. And this is actually on my end of Blackboard, but it should look kind of the same as far as when you're answering your essay questions. So one problem I've had, a few people are, I think, trying to copy and paste images into Blackboard into their answers. And if you do that, I can't always open those. And some of you I've reached out to and asked you to email me those images or whatever. Just be sure when you're putting your answers, your screenshots into your answer in the essay question for the Google Earth exercise, that you use this icon right here, the little paperclip. That is to insert a file. And when you use that paperclip, you insert that file and it'll show up in your answer to where I can see it more easily. When you open this, it's going to ask you to browse your computer, so that screenshot, you're going to have to save it somewhere on your device so you can go back in through this and get that. So just keep that in mind. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. But please, if you don't mind, use that file insert, the little paperclip icon, and use that for your answers. So getting back to Google Earth. So this time what I'm going to do, in the European realm, I'm going to pick out a couple of different places and give you an option on what you want to look at. And I'm going to ask you to kind of tell me a little bit about it, just a little background information, but I'm going to pick that out for you. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to work on trying to measure things and outline things on a map, like a polygon, like an area. So I just very quickly, I'm going to go in here and kind of show you how to do this. And you can play with it and you can come up with different things, different tools on how you want it to look or whatever this is the case. So this is the countryside of France. I was just looking around for a boundary, some type of a boundary, something that had a boundary around it, like a park. It could even be a city boundary, whatever. And I saw this little green boundary, which indicates it's some kind of a park. So I zoomed into this. So I'm going to zoom in here. And what we're going to do for this exercise is we're going to outline this boundary manually and create our own polygon. And then we're going to measure how much area lies within this polygon. So the first thing I'm going to do is I zoomed in, it went to 3D and kind of changed the angle on me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that angle back to straight overhead. And I use my arrows and go back. Now I'm straight overhead on this boundary. I can turn that back to true north. Now we're straight overhead on this. So you might ask, what is this? I had no idea what this was when I opened it. It turns out it's an animal park in France. So that's kind of neat. So what we want to do here is we want to create a polygon. Let's say we wanted to save this place in our maps, or we want to figure out how big this area is. So I'm going to go up here to our toolbar at the top. And the second one over, the first one is the pen, the place mark that we used the first time. The second one is add a polygon. So we're going to add a polygon to the map. So we're going to click on that, add a polygon, and you're going to see a box appear over here on the left. You don't need that right away, but we're going to go back into that in just a second. So what we're going to do is every time you click with your mouse on a point, it'll create a point. And then as you move and click another point, it'll connect that with lines as we go. And as it builds that polygon, it's going to shade it in as we go. So one thing when you're doing lines on here and connecting dots, so a straight line, you can go point to point. So if it's a really long straight line, you can just do 1 point on each end and it'll fill the gap. If it's a curved line, the more points you put within that line, the truer the curve is going to be. And I'll show you here in a second. So I'm going to start out on this corner. We're going to put a point there. And this is a pretty straight line all the way up to this corner. So I'm going to go up here and click the next point. And you can see there's a little line that developed between those two. Now I'm going to go across to where the line is still pretty straight. Click another point. But as we start to curve a little bit, I'm going to start to put a few more points along this line. And you're going to see how it really curves up with the line there. So again, this is kind of a straight stretch here. So we'll just keep going like this, and I'll intermittently put points depending on the curvature of the lines that we're using right here. And I will do this all the way around this polygon. And it's going to take a second. And this green line, again, if it's a green line, it's probably some kind of a park. Sometimes you'll have lines. These lines are relatively straight on this one. Sometimes you'll get a lot more curvy lines on this. So I'm going to try to be good in color within the lines on this, but I might miss just a little bit here. I've actually don't have it far enough. Let's move this up a little bit. There we go. And as you'll notice as you get into this, if you start to cover the line up, you'll be able to see it just a little bit through your polygon there. See, you can still barely see that green through that white. So now I have it outlined. So that's more or less the boundary that I'm trying to cover right there. So now what we can do is go back over to our toolbox over here on the left, the little box that we had. So of course up top we can name this polygon, whatever we want to name it, because it's going to show up in our list over here when we get finished. So now we have, I just named it France. So now we have the style and the color. So okay, so there's two different categories here, the lines and the area. So let's say the line is pretty skinny right now and it's white. So we want to change the color of that line. Let's go with orange. So we change the color of the line to orange, and it's really thin right now. So let's bump that width up to about a 4. And that way we'll be able to see it. So you can see that a lot better now than you could see it before. And the opacity is how clear that color is, or how much you can see through that. So we're going to leave that alone on the line. But the area, you have an option here of filled and outline. So if you just want to see the outline, just keep the outline, and it takes that white out of the box so you can see right through it. Let's say if you want it filled, but you want to kind of see through that white. So in that case, you go into the opacity. And let's put the opacity, we're going to leave it white, but let's put it at 50%. And now you can see it's shaded white, but you can see through that white. That's what opacity means. So the higher the opacity number, the less you can see through it. The lower the opacity number, you can see through it. So let's leave that there, and we're done with that. So we can click OK. Now, one thing I do want to look at on here, and the reason that we're doing this exercise is I'm going to ask you a question on this in the essay question is how big is this area? So you want to know maybe how many acres are in this area. You can go to the measurements and look at that. So right now, the perimeter and area, these are two different measurements. The perimeter, of course, is the line that goes all the way around the outside. That's how long that individual line is. The area is how much is shaded inside of that area. So square miles, it says 0.0. That's because we're in a small area. So we can click that box and let's go to acres. So once we go to acres, we can see that that's 15.5 acres. So we have 15.5 acres within this animal park. So that's just another tool that we can use on here and might be useful to some of y'all if y'all have land or if you're going to buy land or whatever's the case. You can measure things on here. So that's going to be part of our exercise this next time. I'm going to put this video into that exercise question so you'll have it for reference. And I'm going to point out something. I'm going to give you a place and I'm going to have you go to that place and Google Earth and you're going to do what I just did right here. And you're going to tell me some characteristics of that place. So just wanted to show you that, and we're going to keep adding tools as we go along throughout the semester. But this is another exercise that we're going to do right now, and it will kind of bring it all together toward the end of the semester. So thank you, and as always, if you need anything or are going to be late on something, whatever it is, just let me know. Be sure to communicate with me, and we'll work through it. Thank you.